if someone's in a toxic relationship and they were coming out of that and they're having a really hard time trying to forgive that person, we can forgive somebody once we forgive ourselves, right? We have to turn that camera or that light back onto ourselves.
We can forgive others potentially that have hurt us, even if they don't ask for it, and we think what a powerful step to do that. Mm-hmm. But we don't think to actually forgive ourselves. When I work with clients, it does come up a lot. You usually have to build, can you forgive the other person? Okay, can you forgive yourself? Do you want to forgive yourself for that? And they're always like, yeah, I do. And they'll say, do it. Actually do it. Actually say it. There's like that step when we don't. And it's interesting because as clear as it might seem, there's a lot of times confusion. It's like, actually speak it. I forgive myself. I'm curious with you, I wanted to talk to you about a few things. Well, one, just wanted to catch up with you again and talk.
Yeah.
Because the few conversations we've had have been awesome. I wanted to talk to you about the event that you're putting on.
Yes.
And create a space for that. And because that sounded really amazing. And then also just talk to you about you, because a lot of our conversation was about me with the way that we met. I actually, the first time we met, I was a client of yours. I hired you and it was amazing. And so also want to give an opportunity for you to share from your experience for anybody that's going to be tuning into our conversation and being a fly on the wall of us talking, just to open up that space for you to share of what's alive for you. So I would invite you to start from any one of those angles that feels most exciting and alive for you.
And I appreciate you reaching out and giving me the space for us to kind of come together and talk about this stuff, because it's really powerful stuff that's happening right now, like for both of us and the direction that we're going. And it's also interesting because sometimes I always talk about like catalysts, like things happening out of nowhere, that you don't have any control over. And it's like those catalysts open the gates or the doors to like the purpose that gives you the most passion, the most joy. And so for me, stepping into the space of creating a festival, which is called, I named it the Evolve and Unite Festival. And so so in the past, I did some smaller expos in Florida. And so they were on a small scale where I would just have, between 20, 30 vendors. And it was all around like health and, raising consciousness and spirituality. And so from moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and recognizing that I feel like I need community. So that's kind of like how this came about was, okay, I'm going to go back to organizing and creating an event space, which is creating a space for people to come together, to heal, to learn, to grow, ultimately to evolve. Because if we evolve on a personal level, then our collective consciousness in this world evolves too, right? So as within, so without, as above, so below. So that's where the why comes into play as to why I created this space with this festival. And what's interesting is that I'm not focusing on a specific thing, like, spirituality is going to be part of it, right? And having different modalities of people offering sessions, like I offered sessions for 20 plus years, but then also having, people that are more in like the health field, also with, for example, the rise of psychedelics, having people talk about some of these like plant medicines that are coming in. And they've always been here on the planet, but we're just starting to become aware of how powerful they are in regards to healing trauma. And so it's like bringing so many different things together into this festival, which I've never done before, but it's almost like there's this higher force or this power that's moving through me to just put this together. But it's not just me. So it's more of like it's a collective. Right. So it's like the vendors that I'm speaking to, and it's the communities and the small businesses and people wanting to collaborate and give their energy to this. So it is a collective energy that's putting together. So I can't really take the effort to this. I'm just, again, the one in motion, making the thing, like the logistics and the marketing and finding the vendors. But ultimately this is more of like a collective energy building and creating this space.
So you're like a steward
Yeah.
of this space.
Yeah.
But there is a leadership component.
Right. Yeah.
Because if not for you, it doesn't happen at all.
Right. Yeah.
So there's still that piece of you that needs to answer the call, that spark that's coming through you. And I'm curious, as much as you're aligned with it, and as much that it inspires you, and as much that it fits your purpose, do you find yourself coming up against doubt or unsureness or limiting beliefs or any of that type of negative self-talk as you go along the journey of the creation?
Oh, many nights where I just like, still to this day, it's like, whoa, what am I doing? Is this safe? Like my body's like, Jackie, what are you doing? Like, this is like, to me, it feels like I'm putting together the Super Bowl because it's so big from what I'm used to, especially like, for 20 years working with people in one-on-ones, whether that was in person or remotely, and then to like put myself out here into the public and to create this space that is going to be in the public with a lot of people. It's to me, it brings to my ego a lot of fear. So yes, so even to hear this like divine, beautiful calling to step into like this leadership role and be a pillar with other pillars, and take that responsibility, because it's that risk, it's that responsibility, the energy I'm putting into this. And at the same time, my ego's like, no, can I just do, an 8 to 5? Can I just, be at a desk, which is what I used to do. I used to work in corporate America, Should I go back to that? And it's like, nope, you can't. And so like now with the wheels in motion for this festival, there is no going back. Like I'm totally committed. And there are many times I had an opportunity to back out, but if I would have backed out, I feel like I would have had regrets. Right. And I think that's with a lot of people, like, either you follow your passion or you say no, but then are you going to be happy with that no at the end of the day, So.
But even with that knowing, it's not necessarily just a straight line, all systems go, because the resistance is still going to present itself.
Yes.
So do you have any things that you do in particular or process, ways that you interact with your aspects or your parts? It could be somatic, it could be mental, to navigate through when that resistance pops up and when it's strong, of how you work through it.
Yeah, so for me, it's the mental and the somatic. So for example, like I think it was like a couple days ago, I was making coffee. I'm in the kitchen and there was this thought of like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? Like you're about to jump onto the laptop and again, go back to the planning of this event. And what if it's not profitable? What if you lose a lot of money? What if the turnout is not good? And so like all these negative thoughts were starting to come in as I'm making coffee. So I literally was just, oh my gosh, okay. So I breathe through it. I usually catch myself. And that's when I take a moment, I connect with my breath, right? Because through the breath, you now connect with your heart. And so through my heart space, that's when I could feel like, people call it a higher self or a higher power. But I stood there, faced the microwave, and it felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm just in a body. This is just temporary. I started looking around at my surroundings like, this is it. Like, this is, it was like bringing me back into the body. Okay. And then from there, it was the somatic part, which is the releasing. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll literally just shake my body or move my hips and I just did this little shake off in the kitchen. And then I walked myself to the desk. And sometimes also, like, if the negative thoughts are really loud, I will leave and I will go for a walk. Or I will go into my car and I will head over to Starbucks and get a coffee. Like, just, I need to break away from my environment sometimes because that's how loud, like, my shadow is. Like, the ego, the shadow, that it's just gets very, very loud and uncomfortable. So it literally will just force me to move.
I can totally relate to that. So first of all, it's really encouraging to hear somebody else say it, because you know that, like, oh, I'm not alone, I'm not crazy. But the times when I'll be in my house and in my space and I'll just be like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And I go to my car and I'm like, I don't know where to go. The place that I go to sometimes when I just kind of need my own space, and a lot of times, particularly with the kids, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Beyond your own voice and what you're creating and breaking through, but now also being a parent
Yes.
to growing humans.
Yeah.
I'll drive to Whole Foods and I'll get a slice of pizza and an Olipop, and I'll sit and eat it in my car.
Yeah.
And I can just like breathe and just have, and like, okay,
Yeah.
like it doesn't, sometimes it's like, that might not work for other people, but you have to honor whatever
Yeah.
it is for you.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that when you said about shaking.
Yes.
So having the mental and the somatic. And I think obviously the mind is the builder. Mm-hmm. The physical is born from the non-physical. So we have to, that zoom out, that it's like a cellular level view that I call it. You kind of, we get to be in the game, like we're the character, but then you zoom out to know, oh, I'm actually the one that's like moving the joystick.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's cool that I get to be in the game and I get to feel the punches, and it can feel scary. And when it gets too much, I can zoom out. Mm-hmm. But then when we come back into the game, into physicality, there's still things we have to do with our body that'll benefit us. And you even see in nature,
right,
if an animal's getting chased or something, and then all of a sudden it's safe, it'll
and that's
just
how
like
I learned it.
Move and shake things off.
I learned it by a few years ago when there was an article that was published about how when animals have a lot of fear, they usually shake it off. And so that's when I started to explore the science behind that. And so then I started my own practice. It was actually, it started through dancing. So like at the end of the day, especially when I was working with one-on-one sessions, I was taking on a lot of energy for my clients. And so, yes, I could either disconnect from that energy by shaking or even touching water. Like when you touch water, it will disconnect your energy from anyone else's energy. And so I just thought, maybe I'll shake like the animals. And so I started shaking and then incorporating dance. And I found that to be a very, very powerful practice. But yeah, it was inspired by the animals.
Amazing. Yeah. And so you think about sequentially, seemingly the first step is you have to be able to zoom out enough to become the observer and the witness, to be aware that you're having these negative thoughts,
yes,
or these fearful experiences, as opposed to simply being at the effect of them.
Right.
So from that space, now you have an opportunity to start implementing things. But if we don't actually step out and zoom out to be aware and to catch that it's happening, then you're just on the receiving end. So do you have any tips or things that you do particularly? Is it just a matter of repetition to be able to catch yourself, to zoom out and say, hold on a minute, I'm actually the one who's at the joystick. I am the spirit in form. Let me pause for a moment. How do you get yourself into that purview?
So for me, it's always through the breath. Because, and I always talk about the ego only knows the past, right? So the ego is going to create these scenarios because of things that you may have experienced before, right? And so when I listen to my own thoughts by just, again, through pausing, connecting through the breath, sometimes I'll even put my hand over my heart because that really will bring my awareness to my heart if I'm having trouble connecting with my breath. And so from that moment, that's when I could hear the thoughts and acknowledge, oh my gosh, there's a lot of fear. And so if I don't acknowledge my fear, it just festers. And I know this about myself. I just know that if I ignore the fear, keep going on with my day, it hasn't left because I haven't acknowledged it. Right. So that's like, for me, that's like the key is to acknowledge that fear, acknowledge the thoughts that are coming in. And through that acknowledgement, that's when I'll just do a practice, whether that's connecting with my breath or sometimes I use hape. Hape is not nuns. Have you ever heard of hape? Yeah.
I've used Tape
And
before.
so
Yeah.
hape sometimes will help me to get into the really quick, rapid meditative state. So it will force you to connect with your heart. Otherwise, the medicine can make it really uncomfortable for you if you don't. And so for me, that's another
Right.
tool that I use. And then just like what we were talking about with just getting in the car and driving away.
Right.
A lot of times too, I'll have the windows roll down and I will just scream. It's a powerful one.
That's with the windows down.
Yes. Yeah, because again,
So
I'm
that's a
releasing.
lot of people will have the windows up because they don't want anybody to hear.
Right.
And so that's actually even that one small move to put the windows down.
Yes.
There's probably, I would imagine there's some level of safety of also breaking through the fear of judgment of others or being heard or being seen. Just that move of putting the windows down.
Right. And there is, because again, you don't want to, scare a mother that's pushing her baby in a cart in Trader Joe's parking lot, right? So usually
You could probably choose where you're going to scream. Yeah. Like maybe not in the Trader
Right.
Joe's parking lot.
No, but for me, it's a building process. So like I've done it on highways, I've done it in parking lots where there's no cars and, business is closed. But also like forests, like deep in the forest. So for me, it's a matter of building the energy of whatever I need to release, whether that's anger or grief or fear. And then I collect it, and then it's just, I just, with the windows down, because I know that the energy has to go somewhere,
Yeah.
So that's why
And
I always.
I would think the more that you can allow yourself to express it, but even thinking for some people that I think maybe I don't have a car, or maybe I live in a tight city, or maybe my neighbors are close. And if you don't feel comfortable to scream it out of your window, and then that doesn't mean that you can't scream into a pillow.
Right. Yeah, I always say take
There's
a pillow.
still an expelling. The most important thing is to get it
Yes.
out. And if you do it, and if you go into your closet, if you do keep the windows up, if you scream into a pillow, it's still such an incredible benefit of releasing.
is.
Now, the more that you remove the constriction, probably the better, but don't not do it
Right.
because of those other
Right.
concerns.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can release too. I mean, it doesn't even have to be through screaming. You could literally call a friend and say, "Hey, do you have 8 minutes to just let me release?" And so there's been some study around if you talk it out for 8 minutes, it allows you to fully release what has been bothering you. And so that's why, in those 8 minutes, find someone who you can really trust to give you that space, for them to hold that space for you. Let them know, hey, do you have 8 minutes? It's usually code, to see if that person's available to hold that space. And you just talk it out through release, through talking, And so there's so many ways.
That reminds me, I just thought about this, this idea, this company or product that I was kind of ruminating on a little while ago, that somebody brought up the idea when you talk about pain, that there was a 30 or 40% pain reduction simply by talking to somebody and sharing it like it's actually true. And then married that with who's got the most archetypally, who is so loving and receiving that you just want to go and tell them your problems and they can hold you and give a warm hug is your grandma. Is that grandma energy? And what if we created something where it's like you just have senior citizens that you can just call and they'll just listen, and you just like dump all your problems and they just go, "That's okay. You're doing a great job." And then it's like, "Oh, thanks. I feel so much better." Like, I wonder if there's a world to make that. But
that'd be
anyway, I
great
thought
though.
about that. It's like it gives them like something purposeful, and then you get to like have that person that just tells you like, "It doesn't matter. That's okay. You're a good
Yeah.
person,"
Yeah.
or whatever. But it is true, like having that outlet.
Yeah.
So you can move, you can scream, you can call somebody. And then, but coming back to this piece, and you've been trained in it, again, it doesn't happen unless you can have that pattern interrupt to just step out, to zoom
Yes.
out, to be aware this is happening.
Right.
And so for people that aren't used to catching themselves, how do you have anything that you could recommend or suggest of how to actually do that pattern interrupt, to catch yourself in it so that you can step into the space of taking these actions?
I would recommend that the next time that you're triggered, and it could be from anyone or anything, the next time that you're triggered, take that moment to reflect on, first of all, why you were triggered, right? And allow that to move through you. And again, sometimes if you reflect on the why were you triggered part, it'll take you back to usually childhood of something that's very similar to what you're experiencing at that moment. And so by practicing that, why was I triggered? Like the why behind everything that you're triggered by. Again, it could be something that's just like for me, I get triggered about this event coming up, right? And like all of the moving parts that are still kind of floating. And the moments of the fear that come in, I have to catch myself at that moment I'm being triggered. And it could go back to a time in my life where I didn't show up when I was a dancer. I didn't have a routine down, and I was on stage in front of hundreds of people, right? And so I would say that the next time you're triggered, to reflect as to why and allow those thoughts to come in. Allow yourself to feel into that and see what comes up for you. And so the more that you can make it a practice of asking yourself why, that's when you bring more and more awareness to all of the emotions that are uncomfortable that are surfacing.
And I think when we ask ourselves that, it's really important to have an energy of curiosity
Right.
as opposed to judgment.
Yes. Yeah, that's really important. Yeah.
Have that third party witness perspective.
Right.
As opposed to like, why is this happening to
Yeah.
me? It's more like, why is this happening? And even stepping into like, instead of happening to me, what I found is something that's empowering just to speak it, because our words create our worlds, even if we don't believe it first. But it's a power place to take 100% accountability and responsibility for everything in our lives, because it's all a projection of our own mind and consciousness. So if there's something, even if something feels like it's happening to us, just to say, why am I creating this right now? And then stepping more into that space of reclaiming your power, that you're actually the one that's bringing it in.
Right. And even like when, in relationships, like with people, right? Like, how did I attract this person to me? Or what is the lesson that I'm learning from this experience right now? Or how is this person inspiring me at this moment? So yes, it's like the things that are shown even external for you at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that relationship one hits home, because I'm, the further I get out of it, the more I need to admit and acknowledge, not from a place of victim, but from acknowledgement that I am getting out of what was a very abusive relationship with somebody who I'm going to say was suffering or afflicted or representing would be, considered to have narcissistic personality disorder and potentially borderline personality. And it can be a very confusing upside down gaslighting space and you get out of it, a lot of people say in those types of relationships, and I've learned a lot about it, that those people are so evil and they're the worst people on the planet. And, there's no sympathy and you don't deserve it. And that they always go after the people that are open. So I've had to ask myself, as much as it wasn't fair or justified or like I didn't deserve it, it's like, what did I do? What did I open up? What am I missing that I not only attracted that, but I allowed it? And taking the responsibility for two sides to a zipper. What was my contribution to it? And I think a lot of people are resistant to claim that type of accountability and responsibility. Mm-hmm. So what would you share for the people that are like, yeah, but they cheated on me. They stole from me. I didn't deserve it. I got this disease. I got injured. What do you mean I called it in? What do you mean I'm accountable? How does somebody take accountability when there's all of these things that may happen to us that doesn't feel fair?
See, I think that's a toughie because we could easily fall into the victim mentality, right? And so what I believe in is that, for example, like if someone's in a toxic relationship and they were coming out of that and they're having a really hard time trying to forgive that person, the thing is that like with forgiveness, right? The forgiveness is we can forgive somebody once we forgive ourselves, right? So it's kind of like we have to turn that camera or that light back onto ourselves. And what did we learn from that experience? And if it was traumatic, there's obviously the positives in all trauma, because sometimes our trauma becomes our purpose. Like, for example, if I've heard stories from a lot of clients about how if somebody was physically abused as a child, right? Later on, part of their life purpose is to create a non-for-profit to help people coming out of situations where they were abused. And so what they'll do is they'll become a doctor, they'll become a psychologist, they'll become a healer. It's our trauma is part of our purpose, right? And so for me, especially working with like the woo-woo with the spiritual world and knowing that our souls signed up for this, we signed up for our parents, we signed up to be our parents to our own children. So we chose our parents, we chose our children, we chose our careers. And, we did that with a purpose. There's a reason, right? There's no coincidences in this world. And so it's again, like what you were saying, like what was I inspired by at that moment? Or what did I learn in those moments? Or how can I help others that are going through what I went through? So you now are the one, you're like the keeper of the knowledge, like the secrets, right? So now you could take this and help a ton of people that are going through that in their own life now, or maybe they went through it, but they're struggling with, coming out of that, right? And so I always say to people that are, have experienced a lot of trauma is to find the purpose in the trauma, right? And it is so easy to fall into like to the victim mentality, like why me? Why is this happening to me? Why can't I just have that? And so if we carry that mindset of victim mentality, what we're only doing is creating a reality where things are going to be reflected back to us. It's going to put us in the same place we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's why if we change our mentality and our outlook on what happened to us, we're going to create a very different reality, the reality that we desire, right? And I will say, like, self-love, self-acceptance, having compassion, all those things, and self-worth, all of those things is like the core ingredients to the freaking amazing pie that we want to bake for our future, right? And so we literally have to ask ourselves, which reality do I want to live in? Do I want to still live in the reality where so-and-so hurt me and I wish nothing but harm on that person? Or do we want to live in that reality of, that happened to me and that freaking sucked? and I forgive myself, and I also love on myself even more that I went through that, and I'm proud of myself. And with that mentality, you can that's when forgiveness comes, right? Because forgiveness is like a byproduct of all that. So the forgiveness will come towards that person. But again, it's you have to shift your thoughts. You have to shift your mentality around your purpose and the love and forgiveness for yourself after you've went through that.
I think that's such an important thing that you brought up, that piece of self-forgiveness,
Yeah.
because we can forgive others potentially that have hurt us, even if they don't ask for it. And we think, what a powerful step to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't think to actually forgive ourselves. And then sometimes we might get to that point. When I work with clients, it does come up a lot for certain things that happen to relationships. And you usually have to build, can you forgive the other person? Okay, can you forgive yourself? Do you want to forgive yourself for that? And they're always like, yeah, I do. And I'll say, well, then do it. And they'll say, okay. I'm like, no, do it. Actually do it. Actually say it. There's like that step when we don't. And it's interesting because as clear as it might seem, there's a lot of times confusion. It's like, actually speak it. I forgive myself. And it's incredible. That's not something that most people have actually said, those three words. I forgive myself.
Yeah.
And what I've experienced so often when people say that for like the first time, they get really emotional. There's a lot that's coming up because the self that's manifested into form, that we get to be the sort of board where there's like a board of directors and we're like the chairman of all of the different parts. And nobody's going to love us as much as we love us. And we're trying our best. Everybody's trying their best, And so when we can acknowledge that and say, I forgive myself, that part of us can just go, oh, thank you.
Isn't it? It just feels lighter in the body. Think of like how many years people have held on to stuff that, that they did to hurt somebody else and never had the chance to say, I'm sorry to that person, let alone themselves, like how much they're actually carrying, right? So then the moment that they can come to terms with their own self-forgiveness, has got to be incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you don't, you never really clear the space, because if you are the creator and everything is happening from you, but you don't acknowledge that you're forgiven, even though I believe we're all already forgiven in the eyes of God. There's nothing actually to forgive ultimately,
Right.
Yeah. But as we get to be the creators of our lives, we get to step into that power of the duality of recognizing, oh, well, there is something here. I can experience the forgiving. I can experience being forgiven. And then from there, now it's like, okay, so I've shaken it off. I've got the fear out. And then you're left with this blank canvas, which for some people can feel really exciting. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah. And some people can be like,
now what?
I don't know what to do with this. It's so big. And that's, leading into the event that you're putting on. And you've said, you're like, I've done some smaller events, 20 or 30 vendors, which for some people is a really big event. So it's still relative. Right. But tell me about, but you're saying 20, 30 is kind of small. So tell me about this new event that's birthing through you, that you're stewarding, that you're creating, and the bigness of it. Right. And you mentioned about bringing people together. And so it's all tied together in terms of this purpose. And there seems to be an activation of others, but you're expanding for this.
Right.
So how do you navigate through that when you've already done the clearing, but now you got to go into the building?
What's interesting too is that when I put on those events a while back, and when I say a while back, I'm talking about like 2015, 2016. And so for me and as a person, I have grown and evolved so much and healed so much between then and now that I feel like I'm going into this as a completely different person. And I literally have to thank like plant medicine. Like I did ayahuasca back in September of 2022. I drank ayahuasca at a retreat, and it was held by responsible facilitators. And I went under the medicine, and ayahuasca showed me a past life where I was pretty significant. And she said, "Hey, look at this past life," and allowed me to go back into it as that person. And I'm in this space, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I remember this space, and so I was that person, and I didn't have anyone on my team. I was queen. I didn't have a king by choice, right? And so my kingdom was my everything. That country was my everything. And so what I did was so intentional for the people. And so she made me see and almost relive that experience under the medicine, so that afterwards, coming out of that, she literally was helping to remind me of why I'm here, which is to help people, And so the reason she showed me that past life is so that I could remember my power, remember who I was, so that I know that going through this life, I can handle these big things. So that's why I have to say that, because she broke the mold when it came to moving through the fear and helping me to remember who I was. And so now with creating this festival, or this at this large venue in Oregon, that's why it's important for me to bring in people that have experienced psychedelics, but also I know how much psychedelics or plant medicine has helped with people's trauma and with their journeys. And so by having that, but also welcoming, parents with kids. I'm a single mom of 4 boys. And so becoming more aware of our food products, of the health industry, with everything, with the education, it's really important for me to bring in some of this other stuff into this event, such as, how for kids through breath work, it helps them with ADHD, or it helps them with anxiety, with depression. So bringing in, people from the community that are familiar with having sound therapy for children and adults, or breath work for children and adults. And so also is having a focus around vibration as well. So the sound with the vibration, with the hertz frequencies, how certain sound frequencies resonate with certain parts of the body, which is really important for healing. And then also having like workshops, having people be able to walk away from this event having them know the tools of how I can do breathwork on my own, or how I can come back and live, with awareness, live more in my heart instead of from my mind, right? And so I want people to walk away with remembering their own power, whether that be from something somebody said at a lecture or workshop, or through a sound bath, or through a breathwork ceremony. For me, it was ayahuasca. That's how I remembered my power, right? But there's other modalities that can help you to align with your power, align with, living more consciously in your heart instead of your mind. From the mind, there's always going to be fear, right? But from your heart, there's always going to be love. So it's choosing, where do you live? Do you live in your mind, or are you going to live in your heart? And it takes, it's practice to be able to drop into our heart and live from there, because we've been so conditioned to think from the mind. And so with this event, that's why I feel like there's so many moving parts. There's so many topics that are going to be explored. But overall, I want this to be able to help the community. And, even if this grows into something that is being offered in different cities, it'd be nice to offer this, on the East Coast or in the Midwest, and so that it's easily accessible to everybody, right? So that's my goal with all of this. So,
wow.
Yeah, I know that was a lot.
That's a big, beautiful goal. No, it's great. It's so good. I mean, there's so many pieces there too, because you talk about And that's why it's evolve and unite.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's individual and it's collective,
Yes.
and it's heart and mind, and it's self and others, and it's adult and
Yeah.
child. It's breath and
Even fur
sound.
babies, bringing in vendors that have, good quality food products for animals. That's not something that is really talked about, or it's just,
Right.
yeah,
How many vendors are you looking to have for this event?
probably close to 100.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And it's in Portland, right?
Portland. Yeah.
Do you have the date set
Yeah.
yet?
So it's May 31st and June 1st,
Wow.
which is the weekend after Memorial
Incredible.
Day weekend. Because I remember one
Okay.
time I did an expo, and it wasn't a holiday weekend, but I think it was in June. Oh, I think it actually was in May, and it was in Florida, and it was a weekend that, like, in that city, all the high schools were graduating. So I really chose not a good date to have that on. So I learned.
Wow. Well, I'm going to be there. And now I'm wondering whether I want to bring my kids or not.
Yeah,
Yeah, thinking about, because
recommend
I
it.
definitely want to expose them into, more of this type of world and things they can do. Because kids now, man, my kids are 9 and 12, and it's tough to be a kid
It is.
now, I think more than ever, because never before at that age were we exposed to so much external eyeballs and influence.
Right.
And it's tough enough when you're trying to navigate through your school and the cliques and where do I belong.
Yeah.
But what happens now when you have access to the internet and the whole world and all of those inputs, and and then the parents who aren't regulated are filled with fear
Right.
and disconnection, and that permeates into the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of the electromagnetic inputs and the unseen and the screen time and all that. So many more kids, elementary school kids, are talking about having anxiety
Yeah.
and feeling stress and feeling pressured. And, as a kid, obviously you still feel those things. If somebody doesn't like you, or your crush doesn't like you, or something happens, you miss a winning shot in a game, you'll feel bad. But not all of this. I don't remember having this type of, like, I'm so stressed, I'm so anxious, the way that I see it with kids these days. What, are you seeing the same thing?
I am. Yeah. In fact, actually, yesterday I put an order into Amazon for fidget toys because I'm noticing that my kids feel really anxious or distracted in their class. This is a little elementary school, and they tell me that there's kids with cell phones. Now, obviously, they're not allowed to be out, right, in the classroom, but yes, that kids have access to the internet, to cell phones, even on, like, PlayStation 5. You have access to Roblox, which Roblox you can communicate with kids of all ages, right? So it's kind of like do you remember AOL chat rooms back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
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 It's kind of like their version of chat rooms, but they're going into it at a much younger age. And also
Right.
there's, the exposure of even YouTube. When YouTube's not all very conscious,
No.
So, there's, like, even families. I noticed my kids were curious about some families that they were following on YouTube with, like, YouTube channels, but they were promoting, spending money on stuff that's really wasteful, right? And products that were not good for the environment. And so what I did was I started giving them the whole spiel about, our planet and waste. And not only that, but, like, our food ingredients. I've trained my kids to know what, red 40 is. It's an ingredient, and this is what can be caused in your body if you consume red 40. So even my 7-year-olds now, I have them trained to go into the grocery store and check the ingredients. If they want that Kick cereal, please check the ingredients and see what's in it before you buy it. you know? And so
Yeah.
they're raising awareness because now all of a sudden you got all these customers in the aisle and they're looking at the cereal boxes screaming, oh my God, there's red 40, Mom, or there's this blue, whatever. So I'm glad
Yeah.
because, you know, there's other adults and other kids around them. They're like, what is that kid talking about? You know?
Right. Totally.
Right. And so, you know, and plus, like, we're vegetarian. And so one of the things that they'll do when they see meat that's, you know, like meat that's been really processed is they will also talk about meat. So they're having conversations even at school around what's in that cafeteria. What are you serving us? Oh, it's that. So I think the more that we can educate our kids, even though, you know, we don't want to make out the world to seem like it's a really bad place, it's really unsafe and unfit for kids, I think there's a level of honesty that we need to have with our children about what they're seeing, what they're feeling, and just overall what they're experiencing.
Totally. And it's challenging enough dealing with the culture and the environment that isn't prevalent in this conversation, and can be really challenging if both parents, whether married or separated, don't align
Right.
on that, because then the kids are kind of caught in the middle of which one to believe. And with my kids, I'm definitely a label reader, and we talk to them about it. But there's also the question of whether or not they care. And so if they ask for something, I'll be like, read the ingredients to me. And they'll read it and I'll be like, why am I going to say no?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, because it's got high fructose corn syrup and these other things. Like, yeah, exactly. But I want them to learn to say no,
Right.
not just be aware of why I'm saying no. Because left to their own devices, they may say, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. So there's some element of, you say no, you can't have that. But there's also the piece of like allowing them to experience it and know for themselves, because ultimately they're going to end up making their
Right.
own decisions.
Yeah.
And that's been tough too. Like with school lunches, man, the food at the cafeterias are like the worst. But I'd make lunches for my kids, and sometimes they would just get the school lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to shame them
Right.
for it
Right.
and make them feel bad. Like, you can't do that. I'll just say, look, are you going to get the lunch today or not? Because if you are, I'm not going to make you a lunch. And I'd prefer that you didn't, but I don't want you to lie to me about
Right.
it. And it's interesting, my son, who really likes meat, is very sensitive, loves animals, and loves meat, which is exactly how I was, is now at around 12 and a half saying, I kind of think I want to eat less meat. And he's kind of coming to that a bit on his, like, he couldn't force it, you know? And I'm going through that cycle myself. So do you have any thoughts about that for parents in terms of like, we teach our kids, we show our kids, they fall in line with our rules, but where's the balance of like kind of extending the leash to let them learn on their own? You know?
Yeah. And I think what you were saying too about like they have a choice and a say in all of this, and they do, because you also don't want to be like that helicopter mom and helicopter dad of this is what's best for you and I know what's best for you. And maybe you think you do, but it's also allowing them to have that confidence of letting them choose it themselves without judging them. Right. So even though like my house, there's it's all healthy stuff, right? I don't know what they choose when they go to the cafeteria. That is on them. And so like with their father eats meat and he consumes products that we don't consume. But they're also aware that daddy does eat that stuff, but that's also daddy's choice. Right? And so we never judge dad because he eats meat. That's just his choice, right? And so, you know, also like not judging the other parent, right?
Right.
That's really, really important because then the way that you're making them out to be is just it's not fair for anybody, really. It's not fair for the other parent, it's not fair
Right.
for them. So yeah, I would definitely I would just say educate your children, you know, have those conversations about some of the stuff that's now being found in food and what it could do to the body. But at the end of the day, that is their life, that is their choice. You know, once they leave that
Yeah.
nest, you know, it's just your job to keep them safe, right? But once they leave that
Right.
nest, you know, and become an adult, those choices are what they choose. The best thing
Right.
you do is just
Right.
educate them without judgment. Yeah.
You know, my saving grace for me personally, because it's now that I know what I know or believe what I believe, it is so hard for me to give them stuff that I don't align with. But I'm also not in this great flow of cooking these delicious, healthy vegetarian meals
Yeah.
either. So I'm like kind of compromising myself a little bit at different places. But then I think back to not to let myself off the hook, but just to release the pressure a little bit. I ate so much fast food as a kid. I drank so much soda as a kid into my teenage years. I mean, enough for 10 lifetimes. And I'm super healthy now and I feel great. And so if they have the chicken nugget, if they have the soda, if their grandma takes them for ice cream, if you do those things, it's not the end of the
Right.
world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's kind of my saving grace. It's like, it's all just choices. But that idea permeates not only into the kids, but ourselves. How much do we judge ourselves?
Yeah.
And how damaging it can be and restrictive to us actually creating the life that we desire.
Yes. Yeah. I know sometimes like we're exhausted. Like I'm exhausted. They're exhausted. We'll come home from an activity at school or whatnot, and I don't feel like making a large amount of it's called seitan or seitan.
Oh,
So
sure.
like
Yeah.
I don't want to
The
do all
wheat
that. Yeah,
meat.
it's like the wheat gluten flour. I don't want to do all of that. I don't want to make the vegetables. I don't want to make the salad. Okay, so we're just gonna pop in this pizza right now, this frozen pizza, and then we're gonna have oat milk ice cream, and we're just gonna call it a day. All right. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll even have like what's called free for all dinners where they just choose what they want to eat. You know.
Mm.
So, and I think also for us, like growing up, you know, like I was from a small town, so I drank tons of pop and I ate
I
meat.
love pop. Is the Midwest. Must have been,
No,
right?
upstate New York.
Upstate New
I
York.
feel
Okay,
like,
it's
yeah, the
pop in
Midwest does
upstate New
call it
York.
pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I ate terrible. I drank terrible, you know, so I guess it's like, yes, I'm still kicking. You know, I just had my blood work done
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago and it was great. You know, and yes,
Mm.
if I would have kept up with that lifestyle, maybe not so great, right? So I like
Right.
changed positions, a few years ago. But yeah, I think also a lot of the stuff that they're putting in to foods now was not there when we were kids either, though.
That's true.
You know, so I would
Yeah.
just say, do your best. Like, you're not going to control every French fry that goes into that kid's mouth or every piece of granola bar that, could have high fructose corn syrup. Just, again, like, just do your best. At the end of the day, just do your best. Educate them,
Yeah.
get them onto the path of thinking for themselves and the why behind everything. And I think,
Mm.
the body can also heal itself. So we don't have to carry that
Right.
amount of judgment and shame over what we've put into our body either.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I love that. So the kids are just sort of an expression, but then it also does come back into the self of you're just doing your best.
Yes.
You
Just
know,
do
and
your best.
sometimes I've had a lot coming to the surface, a lot of the shadow coming up, and I've find myself in this swirl. And when I catch myself and if I go to the mirror and I look at myself, and if I can pause, I'll just look at myself and be like, you're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
If I don't feel like it, like, way to go. I love you. you're doing the best you can and it's okay. Like just
Yeah.
to get that type of reflection that we need to tell ourselves that as much as possible. And seemingly it's never too late. And that's what looking at the event that you're putting on, the Evolve and Unite, this big event, 100 vendors, speakers, workshops, 2 days. How does somebody make such a thing? How do you do that?
I don't know. Honest to God, like sometimes I just sit here like, what am I doing? Like my ego's like, what are you doing? This is unsafe. But again, like I know that there's this deep, like this energy that again is moving through me, that it's like, there's so many reasons why this is so good for the community and for the world right now, that there is no time to sit back and wonder what you're doing or why you're doing it. Because it's like that inner knowing of this is going to be good for people, you know? So that kind of
Now,
drowns
for
out.
some people, the people that want to, I know a lot of people that they want to create community. And even as what I heard from you earlier about wanting community, and so many of us desire that. It's like after we have that first rung of needs met, we have our shelter, we have our water, we have our food, we have our bed. What's the next thing is that we want to have healthy relationship. And it can be challenging to find that, particularly for those of us that are starting to get a different perspective of the world from what we grew up in, that doesn't make sense as much anymore. And it's hard to relate with friends and family that don't see it in the same way that we do potentially. And so finding community can be challenging. And it seems like you're saying, well, I'm just going to go create it.
Yeah.
Which is a super bold step to be able to do. And for people that would want to do that, and others that would want to create these types of events, or even community, maybe even online communities, but they want to be the one to plant the flag to say, I'm going to bring the community to me, whether it's a weekly Zoom call or a 2-day live transformational event like you. So what would you share for somebody who's wanting to be that community builder and leader, but doesn't know where to start?
I would just say to, first of all, sit with yourself and reflect on, why am I doing this in the first place? Okay. Because the why is like the core of everything. Right. And then I always say, like, what you see a lack of in this world is what you need to embody. So if you see the lack in community in your city, whether that be physically in your city or even a presence with online, especially with, for example, like I don't see a lot of community for men, right? So I see a lot of community for women because I'm part of different communities for women online. But for example, like if you see a need for that, then create that. Because again, if you're noticing the need, that there's something there, and then it kind of that fire within you starts to grow, where, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get really excited about this. I could do this, and that energy is kind of building. Allow it to build, and just get a pen and a paper. There's nothing more powerful than a pen and a paper. And you sit down in silence and you allow the energy to build and write down what it is that you'd like to see for that community, whether that be an event, whether that be an online presence, whether that be something like what you were saying with a workshop, with teaching something valuable that you can give to other people that you feel like would really help them on their journey. And so I would say to just do it. The only thing that's stopping you is you. So are you going to stop yourself from doing ultimately what you desire to do?
Yeah. Abraham Hicks talks about that as well, that it's all about, what was the language that she uses? It's not resistant. There's another word that I'm missing, but essentially to what you said, that we're always the ones that get in our own way. And then we're excited and we're inspired and we write things down. And then there's that piece that comes in that shifts our energy. And then recognizing that we're just the ones that are creating it. And that seems to be that perpetual game that we played, and how we started the conversation of like, oh, do you notice it? Great. clear it, look at it, ask questions, release it, and then come back.
Yeah.
And ideally, every time it happens, the length of time that you're in the muck is shorter, and the depth of the hole you fall in is not as deep, so that you can keep kind of hitting those bumpers and just keep evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, once you start the process, like let's say you want to do this thing, you want to create community, and you actually start the process, whether you get the website and get the platform going or you book that venue, right? Sometimes our shadow is going to be like, our shadow will come out and say, what are you doing? Like, this is really unsafe. You're going to fail. Like, this is going to suck, right? So you're going to have this shadow that's going to come up, okay? It's just natural. The ego's like, what if you fail? So this is when you actually...
What if nobody shows up to my party?
I know. And so, again, you have to look at that. Like, obviously, the energy that you put into it is going to always come back to you, right? So the only thing that is going to stop you in your tracks is yourself. So the key is to keep the momentum going. So even if it's just you planning this, for example, right? Like for me, it's just me planning this festival right now. So right now I'm leaning on people that are close to me to kind of give me that little bit of encouragement through this process, because it's important to be able to lean on others that can see your vision, and they support you, and they may not always see your vision, but if they love and support you, then obviously lean on those people, right? As you're going through the fear and the what ifs and all of the negative self-talk that, tends to manifest when you're doing something big. I would say to just move through that and have a really good support system. And it doesn't even have to be a group of individuals. It could be one person. It could be your kids.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But finding that outlet, and I know there are communities available, some free communities, or just finding like-minded people. It could be, chat rooms or other people that are looking to do the same thing as you, just to have your accountability partner or support partner or somebody that you can vent to and then kind of get you back. And, ideally for me, that's what the intention of having these conversations for and sharing them, because somebody's going to watch this and they're going to identify with what you have to say. And just knowing that somebody else is going through the same shit that I'm going through. It's not that misery loves company, but it's like, oh, okay, good. It's not just me. And then this worked for that person, so it could work for me as well. I guess that's the unite part.
Yes.
Because I like to think, we all share the same mission, I believe. We just may have different assignments. Right. But what other mission ultimately do we have than just walking each other back home? Returning, choosing the state of heavenly consciousness, ushering in the kingdom, the beloved community, union with self, creator, God, all. However, whatever language or story you prefer to tell, we're all kind of doing the same thing, right?
We are. It doesn't even have to be it doesn't have to be booking a huge venue and having a huge festival. It could literally be just you hosting some friends on a Friday night and just coming together and shooting the shit around the fire and talking about each other's trauma. And even that is inspiring, and even that is a form of healing and releasing, and so it doesn't have to be an event like such extreme. It could, again, just be you and a few individuals sitting around the campfire.
Yeah, which is nice, but that's not good enough for you.
No,
you're going big.
Trust me, like I love campfire talks. They're the best.
Yeah. But you got a bigger game you're playing here. So that event is going to be in Portland, May 31st and June 1st. Can you share is there any more details beyond that? or somebody that would potentially want to be a vendor or to participate or to attend?
Yeah, so there's there's an application process. So they would need to go to the website, they fill out the form to register, but there's also the opportunities to speak. So you could be a vendor, you could have product, or you could sell your services. But there's also opportunities to give a lecture, like a 60-minute lecture on whatever topic that you feel, is going to be, powerful for the audience to listen to. And then it also has to align with what we're trying to achieve here. Right. So, and then also making sure that the lectures are different topics. That's another thing. So we're taking in the applications, we're screening the applicants, we're screening what they're talking about. And then also we're going to have panel discussions. So a panel discussion is going to be a team of people that are kind of situated in a workshop room, and the audience can come in and sit down, and then we're going to be talking about a specific topic, and each participant on the panel is going to give their perspective. And so what this does is it kind of opens up someone's own perspective around the specific topic based on what they're hearing. And so they could walk away with a lot of knowledge around some of the stuff that maybe they've never been exposed to before. So we'll have like the panel discussions, the vendors, so the whole expo floor. And then we'll also have workshops, which is, again, more hands-on. So that's going to be your sound baths, breath work. We have a Buddhist temple coming in that's going to be teaching meditation and mindfulness, especially when we're navigating through times of uncertainty. And so there's so much that's going to be happening at this festival that you could come walk around and shop, or you can go upstairs and just listen to all of the lectures and workshops.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. Where can somebody go if they want to apply or get information or participate?
Yeah, so it's the website. So it's evolveunitefestival.com. So there's no and in between. So it's just evolveunitefestival.com.
Okay. And we can leave some links in the description below for anybody that wants to do that. I'm so excited for this.
Oh, I know. We have people coming in from all over. So it's not just people from Portland. There's participants that are coming all the way from Florida and from New York City, California, even though that's just a little bit south of us. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Cool. Amazing. And I'm imagine with the amount of time that this takes up is a big part of your day. But do you want to, especially because of the way that I met you through your work one-on-one with people, do you still have space for that? Are you still offering that while this is being created?
Yes. Yeah. So I do have clients that I meet with, and I have some new clients coming in. So right now, yes, I am taking clients, and then I'll probably shut that down as it gets closer to May. So between now and towards the end of April, I'll be working with one-on-ones.
Do you want to share at all about that one-on-one work that you do with people?
I call it my woo-woo work. So basically, I am an oracle. So I'm a channel for spirit. And so what I can do is communicate with people that are no longer here on the earth plane, so people that have passed away, but then also we all have a spiritual team of guides and angels, and so I'm able to communicate with these beings. They know everything about you. They know why you chose to come to earth. They know why you chose your exes and your parents and your kids. And they also know some of your biggest desires to fulfill in this lifetime. And so what I do is I will see the highest timeline or potential of that person that's sitting on that Zoom with me, of what that looks like. Now, does that mean that that's going to play out the way it is? No. So there's this thing on planet Earth called free will. So it's up to you whether you want to allow that to happen or not. And the insight that I receive is it's not black and white. Okay, so it's all through telepathy. So it's a lot of visuals, it's a lot of feelings that I have in my body that I get about that person. But then I also have the counsel or the wisdom from their guides to be able to say, hey, you're sitting with me and you're worried about your relationship, but your guide is over here telling me that you should be more concerned about your finances right now and the direction that you're taking in your career. And so they always know what's best for you. We may not know that,
Right.
especially if we're so distracted
Right.
with everything that's going on. So it's nice
Yeah.
that our guides can give that different perspective, because it kind of pulls us in at that moment, like, oh crap, I wanted to be that when I was 5 years old, you know? I totally
Totally.
forgot about that
Yeah.
purpose. So it kind
Yeah.
of, that's why I love working with people one-on-ones, because we can go deep, and it could be very, it could be really healing for them. They don't expect to hear what they're going to be hearing sometimes. And so I love that work, but I do see that kind of work going away only because of the need to work with groups. So for the
Right.
festival, and then after that, I have a desire to work with women, but also with men, like in-person retreats where we're in a place where we're going to talk about really deep stuff right now, and like the
Right.
sacred rage practices are where individuals can release by, for example, we were talking about the yelling. You could yell into, in your car, you could yell into a pillow. I want to teach women to be able to release rage and anger, because that's what the collective feminine has experienced on this planet, is a lot of anger we've suppressed, right? From what we've watched through just the thousands and thousands of years of women being suppressed. And so part of what I want to do with women later on is to get them in a space that's really safe and talk about, ways of healing and our trauma, but then also giving them that space to be able to release it without judgment. Because a lot of women, we won't want to yell and scream because we were told that we need to be a nice girl or a good girl,
Right.
right? So for me, I have
Totally.
a passion of working with women to help them get into their power, but also have that space to release. So there's multiple
Yeah.
things that I'm doing and will do. So
Amazing.
I'm pretty busy.
It's all unfolding,
It
and
is.
I'm getting the same call that a lot of people that reach out to me, I'm finding, is it's a lot of women, and I just ask God. I said, who do you want? How can I serve?
Yeah.
Just bring them to me, however I can serve. I don't care if they're young or old or men or women. I do have a particular inclination. I love working with creators and founders and entrepreneurs and artists. But I have a strong calling to work with men, because there's missing, as you said, or there's an opportunity there. But I also want to work with women.
Right.
And then I also want to bring men and women together. And so it's like, I find for myself now, that's when the mind starts, and it's like, well, which one should I do? And I should do that. And this is the sequencing and the branding. And that's when the swirl, I think, starts to come a little bit. So hearing even for you that you have different things, although you have clarity on it, do you ever experience some of the swirl that comes around which one you should do, or what's in most alignment, or what the sequencing should be, or is how do I present myself? Am I too woo-woo? How do you navigate through all of that chatter?
Yeah. I think it's reminding myself that who's ever meant to work with you, is the universe will bring that person to you. And so, like in the past, I used to limit who I would work with, to just the woo-woo people that would be open to hear my woo-woo, right? But then what that did was it just kind of put me in a box. So it kind of limited me, and it limited the amount of people and the types of people that I would be working with. So, how a lot of times, a lot of these coaches will ask you like, hey, what's your ideal client? What does that person or avatar look like? And so for me, I find that could be almost limiting, because I could care less what they have in their bank account. I could care less what they have for a title. Just give me that person that really needs to hear what I'm going to say to them, right? So it's more about who, it's more about like what the amount of people, what type of people you're going to impact in a deep way. And it's, again, for me, like I used to separate the genders, right? Like, because I was going to start a men's group and just work with the men to get something up and rolling where I would show my face, teach them about the feminine, and kind of float out and then go work with females. Right. And then I just thought, you know what? That's really limiting. Like, I just want to be, I want to be called to work however that should be at that moment. Like, so in the past, I would always have like this, again, this mindset of I want to work with these types of people in this way on that day. And it crumbled because I tried to put that together and I watched it crumble and I knew it wasn't in alignment. But because the mind was trying to create something instead of like from my own heart, that's when I noticed it was going to crumble if I planned it out like that. So now I just see the need, for example, with women, because I work mostly with women. I see the need of women needing to have that freedom in their life, but there's so much, not even external, that they don't feel like is suffocating them. It's more of an internal that's suffocating. But it's them suppressing themselves and not releasing themselves so that they could step into this next phase of their life, which is why now I'm being called to work with women. And then obviously I still have that desire to work with men in some capacity, but that is no longer the priority at the moment. So it's kind of like whatever groups present themselves. But again, you don't want to limit or put a limit or a type or ideal avatar too heavily on that. Otherwise, again, it's not really coming from the heart. It's coming from your mind and what you're visioning from the mind.
And that's really powerful feedback because there's so many courses and programs and best practices and do this if you're a coach and 3 keys to marketing, and that's all mind-based,
right,
and psychological based, and there's value to it, and it's true, and there is something to say that if you're not clear on who you're speaking to, if you try to catch everybody, you'll catch nobody. So there is something about the way that we receive information, and it's okay to niche down, and it's okay to be clear on who you want to speak to and who it's not for everybody. Right. And balancing that with where is it limiting potentially? And that's where I feel a lot too, because it's like my one-on-one time is more limited if I can't just work with 20 people a day. So there's this need to charge more for one-on-one than group. Yes. So there is a certain level of like already hitting certain metrics, but the truth is I don't care. It's like a product of what the environment is. And I'm like, what doesn't feel right to me at all is if somebody connects with me and they're really inspired and they really want to do the work and they're ready to show up and to be like, oh, you can't afford me. And be like, I'm serving the wrong master in that regard. So it's an interesting game where because there's also the other side of it. There's so many people, and I'm sure you know some really powerful, really gifted healers, magic makers, guides, seers, and they're broke or they're sleeping in the van or on somebody's couch or really struggling to make ends meet because they're too abstract, they're too hands off, they're too surrendered and not honoring the micro game. Right. Because the business is a game, 3D is a game, form is a game, money is a tool that if we disconnect from it completely, then it's also not going to serve us either. So how do you balance all of that?
For me, I remember when I was starting to work with clients one-on-one, my teacher told me to charge a certain amount per hour. And when she said that, my whole body contracted. Like, no, like, am I worth that much? So I sat with that number, and this was way back. Again, this is like 15 years ago. And so that amount of money at that time was just like felt like it was unheard of for someone for my age with my level of experience. But again, it was a big lesson around like self-worth. Like, what is the value I'm giving that person for those 60 minutes? Conversation could potentially change their life. So I had to like really heal my self-worth, like really work on my self-worth. And then also my relationship with money. You know, I noticed that coming from a small town that, for example, people with money, people who are rich were just snobby assholes, right? So I don't want to be rich. I'm just going to be of service and love and light. And that's when I noticed like, wow, my relationship with money sucks. Like that's how I view money, basically an asshole. Like we're going to have to work on this relationship. So that's when I started to work on relationship with money, but then also identify that I didn't really find myself worthy of that money, but then also worthy of the type of career, the type of relationship, you know, the type of car, everything. Like I had a big self-worth issue that I needed to work on. And so that's when I started to work on that. And I could see it, like what you're saying. I see it all the time when I'm, you know, in these spiritual communities. I'm a member of this community, but yet nobody wants to charge for their services because they want to do it just from love and light. But they're failing to realize that they are also living in a physical world, and that you need that, right? You need that in order to have lights on in your home and food on the table. So, you know, it's one of those where we have to be both feet in the physical world and both feet in the spiritual world. You can't just have, you know, I mean, some people they do okay with having no feet in the spiritual world, but are they genuinely really happy? Maybe not, right? So that's why I feel like we have to look at our relationship with money. We have to look at our relationship with ourselves and the value that we put on ourselves, you know, especially when it comes to working with other people.
And there's so many people getting that call that they want to share, they want to help, or they want to support, and stepping in to that type of service and working through that. The one about worth is a really big one. I would imagine, because I know I get that a lot. Do you get that a lot with your clients, of having that lack of self-worth?
Yes, I speak to, the type of clients that I have at this current moment are people that are out there doing big things. It's really awesome to see their journey, but they didn't start from that. They started with the issues of self-worth. Like, I don't know if I can leave my job, and, you know, what about all this retirement I've paid into? You know, I've worked with clients for many years. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to work with you once or twice. I've been with them for the past like 7, 8, sometimes 10 years. And so I've watched their journey. And so again, like where they're at now is very different than where they were at, you know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, because they started off with issues of self-worth that they were working for. A lot of them worked for 8 to 5, you know, jobs, corporate America. They didn't know who they were. Some of them were going through marriages where they were extremely unhappy. And so watching their journey unfold, but then also giving them the tools to gain that self-confidence, the self-worth. Now I'm starting to see them in a very, very different light, doing very, very different things. So, yes, I've seen that a lot in my own clientele.
Is there anything that you see a common thread between all of them, that the guides, each person's individual on their path, but are there common themes or threads that you're seeing guides sharing that show up for a lot of different people?
Yes, I would say the number one thing that tends to show up is fear. Like the guides, I will see for example, the highest timeline for that person, and it doesn't even look like what they're doing right now. It looks like it's a completely different person. But again, I'm being shown the highest potential of that person at this particular moment. And so the way from the timeline they're at now to the timeline that I'm being shown, that in between is mostly fear. So if they could just break, I mean, as obviously easier said than done, but if they were to break through that layer of fear, then yes, they would reach that ultimate timeline. And the fear is usually the number one thing that holds my clients back from reaching their highest potential. Yes.
Amazing. And I can speak from personal experience working with you that what you shared with me right out of the gate, as woo-woo as it might sound for some, it's not woo-woo to me. Be like, can you please check in with my invisible, non-physical, angelic spirit guides to tell me what's going on? Like that feels normal, and some people be insane. Now, looking and understanding the metaphysics of life, it's actually incredibly logical, but without going off on that tangent. What I experienced from you, it doesn't even matter where it came from. It wasn't a fortune cookie. It was so specific, and it was so uniquely applicable to me of exactly where I was in my life. And it was empowering and it was inspiring. But I love hearing you say that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's possible, but there's still action you need to take. And it makes a lot of sense. It's like, well, how do I know if it's going to happen or if it's not going to happen? And any concern about that is all based on fear and the restrictive energy that fear brings up. And this is so, so important. And probably I would agree with you, the crux of the work that I share has to do with understanding fear and releasing fear. And so share a little bit about fear. I'd love to know from your perspective, where does it come from and what purpose does it serve and how do we move through it?
Right. So I would say it comes through the ego. Now we got to remember the ego's job, why we're given an ego in the first place on this planet, right? The ego's job is to ultimately protect us. So that's the only job of the ego, right? And so as we're going through life, as we're going through circumstances that would have been very difficult for us, our ego remembers those circumstances at the times in our life where we had the most amount of fear. And so what happens is if we, for example, think that we're going to make a choice about quitting our job next week and trying to do something completely different, that ego is going to be that loud mouth that is going to be whispering in your ear, what are you doing, bro? Where's that paycheck going to come from? You're going to fail like you did 15 years old when you lost your job. So it goes, the ego only knows the past and its only job is to protect you, right? And so some people, they will give in to their ego. Most people on the planet, they give in to the ego. They allow the ego to have this whole life experience and navigate through life carrying that amounts of fear. But again, the ego's job is to protect us. So ultimately the ego is winning, if you want to put it like that. Like the ego is going to win the show and make sure that you don't achieve that highest timeline because that's not safe, right? It's not what you did before. Maybe it didn't see other people in your family or in your circle achieving that kind of status or abundance. And so the ego doesn't feel like it's possible. Right. And so if we can acknowledge that, yes, I have a big ego. Sometimes people even name their own ego. Okay. Because it's almost like its own identity. Right.
Totally.
I mean, not to say that the ego is a bad thing, because the ego is also what creates a lot of art. It creates our music. It creates, the stuff we see on canvas and museums, So there's a lot of good that comes from the ego. But again, we have to remember that the ego's only job is to protect us. That's the only job it has. And so what I would say is to to check in with yourself, check in with your heart. Obviously we're in our society, we're trained to think from the mind. Think it out, like think before you say, right? We're trained to think. And so what that does is it pulls us out of our heart, which is the heart is the gateway to spirit, is the gateway to the spirit world. Mm-hmm. Right? And so for me, especially when it comes to like working with spirit, I can't access spirit from my mind. That's not where spirit comes from. That's not where they are at. Okay, they're actually through your heart, right? And so I have to be able to be in my own heart in order to access other people's guides and to access other people that have passed on. And so in my own work, I've had to train myself to be in the heart. And so now going through the life experience of being grounded in my heart, working with spirit, to now I'm in the physical plane of existence and I'm paying bills and I'm not liking this earthly experience all the time, right? I'm having to go in and out of the heart and the mind. And so that's one thing I would love people to learn, is to live more into the heart space, which is detaching from the mind, detaching from the noise, the limited beliefs, the fear. Obviously acknowledge it, because if you don't, it's going to fester and get louder. But the moment that you can acknowledge, holy shit, that's my ego trying to protect me. Oh my God, thanks buddy. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to give you praise for protecting me, but I got this. Totally. And then you breathe and you could feel in your body, so you're so much more grounded the moment you could realize it.
It's so powerful. And that's such an important lesson for us to learn, the wisdom of the heart and the role that the heart plays separate from the mind. And even it takes a level of courage to follow your heart. And I recently learned the etymology of the word courage. Do you know what it is? Have you heard this? It's amazing. When we think about courage, we think about bravery, we think about stepping forward, but the word courage actually means to follow your heart. It's corage, corazón, courage. It's the way of the heart. It's the time of the heart. So to take the action of listening to the wisdom of your heart and moving forward from that place of what you're talking about is literally, by definition, courage in action. And there's this piece where I think the way that I think about it, it's our life as a car. And inside the car is our body and our mind and our heart. And when we're young, our body's driving and our mind's in the shotgun and the heart's in the back. And it's all about the body. Even for women, it's, physical attractiveness, strength, dominance. And we take care of ourselves and we exert. And then we get older and now our mind kicks in and now we get clever and now we get smart. And now we can strategize. And the mind says, let me drive. The body sits shotgun. The heart's still in the back, though. But it's there, but not as important. Now maybe we have kids. We're starting to feel our heart a little bit and want to connect with the world, be philanthropic. The heart moves up into shotgun. The body kind of takes a back seat. We don't exercise as much, but the mind is still driving. And then eventually, we all hit this moment, and I think it's happening a lot now collectively, where our mind's been driving and we've been strategizing and we've been trying to figure things out, and maybe we got the job and we got the money, but things are breaking down. The relationships aren't working and we're not feeling fulfilled and we're not happy and the success metrics aren't kicking back and we can't think ourselves out of this and there's some confusion we're experiencing. I think that's the time when the heart looks at the mind and says, thank you. You've done a great job getting us as far as you have, but now it's time for me to drive. And then it takes over. And I feel like we're in that space now of becoming aware of that, of learning how to step into our heart. And there's a lot of teachings as well in terms of even prophecy or esoteric teachings of this evolution of consciousness as we move into the fourth density consciousness or the seventh sun or the eagle condor, it's all saying the same thing of dropping in, listening to that wisdom of the heart as it's more expansive to you. And it kind of feels like the thing that we need at this time is for us to collectively learn that it's even a thing, and then learn the steps to embody it.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, when we are in our heart, there's actually no thought. Like a lot of clients will say, well, how do I know if I'm in my heart? Well, there's no noise. It's just silence, and it's a practice, like for me, like when I put my physical hand over my heart, that's like that. It's that strong get in your heart, and so it just will subtly happen, But it takes the practice of knowing how to get into the heart, And again, that could be through that nice like exhale release, dropping the shoulders and becoming aware of the breath. That's a good way to get into the heart immediately, or just the hand over heart, close your eyes and breathe. And all of a sudden, there's no thoughts. If a thought enters the mind, you have now you've now disconnected from your heart. So that's the up and down. This is where you kind of want to see, okay, how long can I go with sitting in my heart? And some people can meditate without thoughts. They're just sitting in the frequency of their heart.
And if we have to focus on something, all of the thoughts coming in, to actually bring the drishti or the focus, just follow the breath like an elevator to come in here, and then allow it to kind of expand out of that place.
Right. Like it's almost like you're opening up the receptive mind, like the receptive part of your mind. So it's like you're shifting gears. I mean, you could even visualize like the front of your mind going to the back, and then the back of the mind going to the front. So you're just shifting to a more of receiving, So
Right.
like when I'm meditating and I'm, connecting with my own spiritual team and I'm asking for advice, they're usually going to just flash me something that I'm going to receive. So again, the mind is not in control. It's me staying within my own heart, but I am allowing for my receptive part of the mind to receive the words or the visuals or the music from spirit.
Right. Yeah, the mind it's a tremendous servant, just a horrible master.
Yeah.
And we can only serve one master.
Yeah, it's true.
Wow. I loved this conversation.
I know, we could talk for hours, can't we?
I think we should. Actually, yeah. Maybe this is a thing. This is kind of the fun thing too about creating live. You can think, and I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm more of a forest guy than a trees guy. And so I can get lost in the kind of the container and the context and the brand, because it all has to kind of make sense. If you're building an amusement park, there's going to be rides, and there's going to be food, and there's going to be entertainment, and there's going to be bathrooms and all these sorts of things. And sometimes it's just, you just want to create the one thing, but I'm thinking, oh, but wait, which land is it going to be in? Or where are we going? Wait, how are they going to get here? And then the more that you do that, that's cool, but then you end up not actually just making the thing. So this is a practice for me too, to just make the thing. And who knows where it's going to go? Maybe you and I are going to host a podcast together and change the world. And we end up talking every day, and millions of people listen to us. And then we're celebrated by the heavenly realms and angels for our work in the world. Or maybe not. Yeah. Maybe I won't talk to you for a little while. Like, I don't know. We don't know. Right. But just being in that space and allowing the whatever feels inspiring to come through. But one thing that is for sure is the more that we communicate about these things, as we're learning to be more telepathic, as we're learning to be more energetic, we utilize the tools we have because we are left brain dominant now and have been socialized and trained to be left brain dominant, that we use language and that it can connect with people where they're at. Because I find that between the left brain and the right brain, we need them both to be activated 100%. The right brain, more emotional, feeling, abstract. I don't want to say necessarily that the right brain's more connected to source and spirit than the left brain, but the non-physical does create the physical. And the right brain tends to operate more in the non-physical space. And I think when we use language, the left brain, the pragmatic logical, is actually taking the words and the structure and having it make sense. How it feels to us will be interpreted with the right brain, but we become so left brain dominant that if we can't logically or rationally or pragmatically understand something, then we block it.
Yeah.
And so if we can find the right language, the right way to communicate, where the left brain can say, oh, I understand that. That makes sense. Then it can like open up for the right brain to kind of be like, finally, that's what I've been trying to tell you. They just haven't been able to communicate it properly to each other. And that's what makes conversations like these so important, because we're speaking to that part of us that's just saying like, I kind of feel the things you're saying, but I don't have the language to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you were like, for me, I call myself woo-woo, talking about woo-woo stuff, because it's not the norm. It's not the stuff that we hear about people talking in coffee shops over, or even in our workplace environments. We just don't talk about like spirituality and esoteric stuff. So yeah, I think, and it's all connected too, which is the craziest thing, we're just, spiritual beings having this human experience. And so that's why I feel like there has to be a way to bridge the two, and I feel like that would just sit so well in people's beings, just even knowing that they have a whole group of people in the non-physical that have their back. And if they just knew that, they would carry on life a lot differently.
Totally. And I think that's the piece for me, is being a holistic human. It's a yes and game.
Yeah.
And so we're just filling in all the pieces.
And there's no right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
It just is.
Yeah. It's just choice, it's preference. And allow ourselves to align with the choice and the preference that feels the best. Now, it should be authentic, of course, but there's always an authentic expression that feels good. So why not just choose that?
Yeah. That's why we have to get out of our own way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, this was so great, Jackie. Thanks for the time. I love this. And we shared, so we can put the links in for, it's evolveandunitefestival.com. Now, what if somebody wants to reach out and work with you directly and talk to their guides and
so
all of those in the unseen?
I still have my personal website up. So that's thesacredoracle.org, O-R-G. So so I'm still going to take clients. I'm assuming until the end of April. And then I may open it up later this fall. But yeah, between now and end of April is when I'm available.
I know some people that I'm like, you gotta talk to Jackie.
Bring them down.
You should call Jackie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we'll talk again, or I'll catch up to your speed about being able to communicate telepathically, and then we won't even have to go through all this. Worried about microphones and record buttons and shit. Cool. All right, Jackie. Take care.
Bye.
Talk to you later.